Hello, welcome to. I don't even know what today's date is, but today's TikTok live. It's that vegan show. It's like the second one in successive weeks after a little break. Don't think Ronnie will be joining us today, but Roger's already here. So as far as I'm aware, it'll just be me and Roger this evening. So feel free if you would like at any point or put any questions in or anything like that. There's no one in here at the moment, so it's just more for the YouTube, I suppose, that listen to it afterwards. Evening.
Hello.
Just talking to ourselves at the moment, it looks like.
Well, at least we can't get criticised for that.
No, no.
Although
I think you're allowed to talk to yourself on TikTok. I think that's considered normal. That's all
I
right.
wouldn't, I wouldn't put it past somebody to have a go. Anyway,
No, I don't know what it's like there. It's absolutely freezing here today.
yeah, it is a bit chilly actually. Yeah, um, I got a cat having a bit of a mad half hour.
No.
So a bit of a bittersweet day or weekend really, because I suppose it marks the end of the Vegan Information Project, or at least in terms of its first 10 years, because the van, we had a van which we got from back into Daylight Animal Sanctuary. I think probably about 7, maybe 8 years ago now, because I used to have this old well, it wasn't old, but I used to have this this blue Hyundai car, right? And we started to do gazebo stalls, and it was getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and so we actually wrecked the car by putting too much equipment in it, essentially, right?
Yeah.
And so we decided we needed to get a car and a van, and there was two vans at the back into Daylight Animal Sanctuary. So we bought one off them for €4,000, and they were really good because they allowed us to pay in installments.
All right.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so we're able to do it.
And
But
it's funny though, because although it's kind of the other way around, my first vehicle was a van that came from Wonky Pets, the sanctuary that I used to volunteer at. And now I've gone things the other way around. So my van was kind of used as all things transport, whether that was human, non-human, or just general stuff. And now I've got a car, which is about the same size as my van, but obviously is a car. And some of the stuff that I've transported, yeah, I mean, I don't know how long my car will last if I continue to treat her the way that I do.
so there must be a story behind Wonky Pets.
Well, it essentially means what it says at face value. So they're a rescue stroke sanctuary that took in animals for the most part that either needed rehoming or they had quite a few dogs that would have been there for life that couldn't be rehomed. So it was kind of like a play on the words, yeah. But obviously the main sort of focus was to turn these animals around. They were, in terms of the dog breed, they were kind of split into two halves. So one was primarily focused on Shar-Peis, the breed, and the other one was more like Cockapoos. And they had two different sites. But yeah, they took a lot of dogs, especially in the Shar-Pei cases, that nobody else would work with or nobody else would take on, and quite a lot of those got worked with, turned around, and eventually ended up being homed, whereas they otherwise would have been euthanized. So it was a really nice place, but you know, as things do, money donations dry up, and they just couldn't afford to run two sites, which happens. So they downsized to just the one site, and the place that was just literally up the road from me no longer exists.
Oh right, yeah. Well, it's one interesting movement issue, isn't it? The fact that a lot of animal advocates or animal people, let's say that, end up with problem cases or the more difficult to
Yeah,
home.
absolutely.
Yeah, and that impacts on their ability to campaign then.
Well, there's so many factors. I mean, just for example, if you're running like a sanctuary or a rescue, and you take on one dog, for example, that's either going to be with you for life or going to be with you for a decent amount of time, it's not just obviously the finances involved in that, but it's also the time that you need to spend working with said dog to make sure that they can potentially one day be rehomed or be put in a situation where they can thrive again. And that's hours and hours and hours every day. And I mean, you take somewhere like back into daylight, I'm sure you know from your own experience, sometimes just going round and feeding and watering the animals, but doing nothing else takes all day. So when you've got to find these extra 3, 4 hours all the time for one individual, yeah, it starts to get very difficult. And I mean, we've seen over the number of years, lots of rescues for whatever reason have fallen apart. And I know that lots of people kind of like to say, well, this rescue's not very good, or this rescue's doing this particular thing badly. But in hindsight, I mean, once upon a time, I would have been one of those people as well that would have been criticism first. But in hindsight, I think it's almost impossible to think that someone ever started a rescue or a sanctuary with bad intentions in mind. It's just the fact that whether it's financial burdens, whether it's because they got poorly, whether it's because volunteers no longer turned up anymore, or they just got overburdened with too many animals, there is a significant factor that starts and it just snowballs and it gets to the point where they no longer can cope. It's not, I don't think it ever starts out maliciously, even if that's how it ends up. It's just almost like they'll cut corners because they've got no choice but to cut corners.
Yeah, well, in my experience, that last thing you said, which is they end up with too many
Yeah.
residents, is very common. But the problem is you get kind of moral blackmail
Yeah,
from.
absolutely. And once you've got a site, and I'm sure again, I'm sure this happens to Declan. Once you've got a site like a premises as well that people can get to, you'll turn up in the morning, open the gates, and there'll be a box of kittens, or some people will bring animal. It's not just the fact that you get the phone calls. You don't even get a choice in the matter. They just literally get brought to the gate or sometimes left at the gate overnight, and they're your responsibility from the morning. So yeah, absolutely you do. I mean, the one thing that I can remember from dog rescue when I first joined, say, I don't know, 10, 11 years ago, the idea of something that was code red, urgent, really meant that. It meant that there was a dog that potentially had 24 or less hours for us to act before they no longer would be with us. Whereas as time went on, it would be like relationship breakdown. A couple have broken up last weekend and they no longer want their dog code red. It's like, this isn't a code red, but that language is kind of portrayed to the public as we've got to drop everything right now. And the other thing that
Mm.
got factored in was if the dog isn't collected from such and such location by this time, they're going to be put to sleep at the vets. So even more emotional blackmail, as in you have
Yeah,
to have.
loads of it. Yeah, yeah.
But
Actually,
funny enough, I mean, one of the things that I used to sort of repeat over and over again when I was in rescue was everyone that ever makes that accusation, i.e., this has to be done by this time, otherwise we're going to the vets. Well, I'm assuming that fee, the euthanasia fee, that's being donated with the animal, yes? Because you've got it, clearly willing to pay it. So if we're going to bail you out, I'm assuming that however much money it's going to cost for euthanasia is being donated, and of course it's not, because they never had that money. It's always an empty, veiled threat. But yeah, you'd be surprised how many times this happens. And I mean, no disrespect to sort of activists as well, but plenty of times just from wonky, like say the spring, you'd get chicks that would be brought there from vegan activists. You'd get baby lambs that would be brought there from, and these people might come for the weekend and help out, and then you'd never see them again. And it's like, yeah, but we've got 10 months of day-to-day care and these for these animals and all the finances that go involved, and like, where's it coming from?
well, yeah. I mean, I know a case back in the day where a lot of beagles were rescued and then they were found all to be pregnant.
Yeah. Hey Jennifer, is that a new profile, is it? Or just a new name?
Hi, Jennifer. Actually, and another one about the emotional blackmail, Andy, was that somebody turned up, a farmer turned up at the gates of Back into Daylight and said to Declan, our chickens, free range chickens, are
I
going,
already know what you're gonna say because yeah, exactly, yeah. For
and he was given 24 hours
yeah.
to go and get them.
I've seen that lots and lots and lots of times. Yeah, in fact, at least once a year, there's usually a big drive for ducks and chickens for exactly the same thing, and it's always like we know it's happening, similar thing every single year, but yet they always give a very similar amount of notice. They all have to be picked up by this time tomorrow. You know, they couldn't possibly hold on to them for an extra few hours. They couldn't have possibly given everyone a few weeks more notice. No, it's always the same because that's how they get what they want, you see. If they'd have told you in 3 months' time, there's a chance that this is going to happen, no one will act. If they tell you you have to do this by 10 o'clock tomorrow, yeah, it works, sadly. That's the problem.
Well, the weird thing is, it kind of worked. It was true, really, because the slaughterhouse truck was arriving.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Well, this is it, and I'm sure again in those situations, what usually happens too is let's just say there is one of these times where you kind of get emotionally blackmailed into taking, I don't know, let's just say hypothetically 100 chickens overnight. When that first post on social media or whatever goes up to say we've just taken in these 100 lives, this was the situation, you'll get quite a lot of support from people. But after that initial posters have sort of had its momentum and died off, you won't get any more support for all of those lives. And it's like, yeah, there's still 100+ lives to feed every day. Thank you for the support last week, but that's only lasted us until this week. And it all dries up, and because there's a next big case that's controversial or got that attention. And that's kind of how it works with the dog rescue as well. Each big sort of controversial incident will get attention for X amount of time, and then it dries up. But the problem is that funding and that support, it needs to be long term and consistent, and it never is.
yeah, the thing is on that one though is that I wonder whether subconsciously or not, there's a recognition because if you was to give and give consistently to all the sanctuaries that are asking, you wouldn't have anything left, and
No,
so
absolutely you wouldn't. No, no, no.
yeah.
There's so many different ones now doing so many different things, and I mean we're talking genuine, brilliant people as well. You know, there's so many to choose from. No, you wouldn't have anything at all left. You just
But
wouldn't.
there's that horrible thing as well, though, isn't there, Andy? That keeping other animals alive and for life, and because they are kind of designed to have a slaughter date, that means that in later life they might have a lot of complications. So that means vets and everything.
Of course,
It,
absolutely. And
yeah,
the other thing that
very
comes from
very
that too
expensive.
yeah, not only the expense, but often as well, you find that, especially when it comes to, say, birds or even pigs, the vets have got no experience of things like arthritis or any other ailments that may come with age, because the only pigs or chickens or sheep that they've ever met were right before slaughter age. So they only know them as youngsters for the most part, or they only know how to look for like mastitis because they're being milked. They don't know how to look after a cow that's lived their life free because they've got no experience of that. So like this, it's not even just finding the money. Sometimes it's really difficult to find a vet, sorry, that can actually properly diagnose what the problem is. And
Yeah,
I've found that a number of times, especially when it comes to poultry. People that have got ducks and chickens, they'll call the vet out for certain things, and they've actually got a better understanding of the problem than the vet has, and they're almost teaching the vet.
yeah. I must have mentioned before that there was a ALF rescued piglet called who was named Rasher, and when he got older and older and older, he did get sick, and they called an agricultural vet out, and the vet said that he had no idea what was wrong with the pig,
Yeah.
and they said why, and he said I've never seen one this old before.
Absolutely, yes, it's commonplace. So the couple of pigs that were at Wonkies, they were enormous. Obviously, they weren't ever supposed to potentially get to the age that they did.
And a lot of feet problems because of that.
Absolutely, yeah. They were far too heavy. That was the problem. Even worse if it got wet because they couldn't waddle the way that they usually would to move themselves, and sometimes they get stuck. And the vet was absolutely clueless because they'd never come across pigs that had got to like 10, 11 years old. Just didn't it ever happen in their whole careers. So, yeah, I mean that should really tell us how seldom this actually happens, that vets have got no actual experience of dealing with animals at that age.
Yeah, it's a weird one, isn't it? You
Yeah,
know.
and I mean, when we're talking about, say, chickens, we're not talking about ridiculous ages either. It's almost like they've got no experience of a 4-year-old chicken. They've got no experience of some of these things because they've never met one.
Yeah, well, and also even a 1-year-old broiler chicken, they probably wouldn't
No, no,
ever
yeah,
met,
because
ever met one before.
it's surpassed the usual expectation of when they, yeah. So essentially, yeah. And also, I
Mm.
suppose the other thing we have to take into consideration is when they visit these animals that are essentially in wherever they are, the farming environment, before they go to the slaughterhouse, the expectation level in terms of health is bare minimum, isn't it? It's make sure that they're fit enough to go on the truck, not make sure that they're going to have a healthy life for the next however
Yeah,
many
it's
years.
not optimal. It's
Yeah,
just getting them
so it's a
by, isn't it?
completely
Yeah.
different learning experience anyway. Even if they have got
Mm.
knowledge of this particular ailment, it'll only be to make sure that they last for long enough before they die. It won't be how can they have a nice, comfortable existence. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, it makes it all the more galling when you get all these propaganda tales from the farming community about the way that they consider other animals, and you know they're just telling lies, really.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, one of the things you hear quite regularly when you sort of make the accusation that they're just property and they're just objects. And it's like, oh, if that was the case, we wouldn't spend money in the vets. And it's like, yeah, of course you would. In the same way that a car dealership still pays the mechanic because there's a profit to be made from that particular alteration or improvement. There's a profit to be made by making sure that that engine runs properly, or at least properly enough.
That's even built into law, the idea that a property owner will act rationally in terms of their property.
Yeah.
Mm.
Oh, yeah, and I mean we have heard that before, haven't we? In the regards to the RSPCA for him or any of these organisations, they kind of refer to farmers and they kind of refer to them as though, well, they wouldn't do anything bad because this is their property, and you wouldn't key your own car, you wouldn't smash your own windows, so therefore they're not going to mistreat their own animals. That's kind of the excuse they usually get given.
Yeah, it's kind of counterintuitive.
Yeah.
Oh, before I forget, I received this in the post yesterday, which is really nice. This is the Humanity Trigger by Mark Humanity, and
I like the front cover. That's nice.
yeah, this is 200 years of direct action in Ireland. Or well, actually, it's wider than Ireland, but there's some really
What are
kind of
the?
interesting.
I can't see them properly. What are the eyes? Are they depicting different things?
Yeah, they're kind of vegetables, I think. Well, there's a mushroom and a lemon.
Yeah, I thought it was a lemon. No, it's a mushroom. Okay. Yeah, I wondered what they were. Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, it's a bit scary looking, really.
Yeah, make a good Halloween mask.
Yeah, so it's Earth Island Books, if people can see it, and so
So is
yeah,
that brand spanking new? Is that like, or is that just
yeah,
finally one?
yeah, arrived brand. Yeah, oh, you mean the actual publication? Yes, it is. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
just out.
yeah,
Yeah,
just out.
yeah.
Oh, let's have a look at that.
It's a brand new book, but it's also a brand new publication. I know what you're getting at. And
Yeah.
so Mark did 3 vegan time tunnels with me when we
Yeah.
went through all of this. So they're available on my YouTube channel if people want to watch that. Which is, I mean, it's quite an interesting kind of history. He lives in New Zealand now, at the edge of a rainforest. Would you believe?
Oh, wow.
I know, yeah.
Bit of a change then. Bit of a change in scenery.
Yeah, rather, yeah, from Ireland.
That's nice.
And then I think he went from Ireland to London as well. He did a lot of sabbing and that in England.
Right.
Because there was a lot of violence in Ireland against the Sabs.
Yeah.
The Irish hunters had a real violent reputation. But which we kind of knew about in Liverpool, because a lot of the Irish hunters would come over for the Waterloo Cup, which is the hare coursing, and there's probably no one more violent than hare coursers. They really are violent. So
Yeah.
you've got to be very careful taking any action against hare coursing.
Yes. Yeah.
There it goes. Yeah. So Humanity Trigger. It's a good book. My bedtime reading.
Have you already started it? Have you?
Well, obviously, I kind of know a lot of what's in it
From speaking to you.
because of the videos that I did, or the
Yeah.
time tunnels. But I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I haven't seen. And I did do a little advert for a particular reason why it's because I thought it was humanity being triggered, and it's not that. It's something else. So
Okay.
yeah. So because I thought the humanity trigger must something to do with being triggered by the rights violations going on or whatever, but it's not that. So who have we got in the
Interesting.
house? Is Jennifer gone? Is she still there?
I think she's possibly still there. But yeah, if anyone is interested in that, that's at Roger Yates on YouTube. Very easy to find.
Yeah.
And they'll be in the Time Tunnels playlist, I'm guessing.
Yes. The vegan time tunnel. It's called. Yeah. The playlist.
So what was Ronnie up to? Is he busy, or is he feeling better from his COVID?
I think so. He's got some guests coming over.
Ah, fair enough.
And he also had this really weird interview that he had to do. He got called out to do an interview, but the people wanted to do it at a bus stop.
At a bus stop?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. What was
So it
what
was
was
all,
it
it
an
was all,
interview
all a little bit,
regarding?
kind of like, blimey, this is not the 70s anymore, kind of thing. What's going on? But I think he didn't tell me how it went, but I'm assuming it's been
Well,
a
I suppose
long.
that's pretty different. I
I
mean,
suppose so.
what
Yeah.
was the interview about? Like at the ALF, or I mean,
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
how
So
bizarre. But at the same time, I suppose that's a quite an interesting location. Yeah, I can't say I've ever really seen an interview at a bus
yeah.
stop.
Hey mate, do you want to buy a dirty postcard? This one's got jam on it. And I
Ronnie's probably not allowed by any bus stops because of all his littering. Oh,
Oh
yeah, that'd
yes,
be
good.
interesting actually. I'll have to see when that comes out, just to see what the angle is there and whether that's relevant for any reason or whether they just pick strange locations just to make it a bit different.
Yeah, maybe there's some kind of, I don't know, quirky thing that's going on. I really don't know. So
Could be, could be. But I suppose it breaks the monotony of just being sat down on the sofa or in a studio.
I
It's,
guess it is.
no.
Somebody's saying, long time no breathe, troops.
Hello, Jim. Welcome. Is there anyone else? It's still not got a lot of coverage at the moment. I've noticed every video that I've posted that's in any way, shape, or form sort of Palestine related has absolutely flopped in any way, like really bad. So I think there's definitely some censorship there.
Oh, you think so? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Because the one video that I shared, which was just an old clip from years ago, I put it on a different TikTok that I just used to test things. It's got no followers or anything else, and I didn't add any hashtags. I just literally posted the video, and it's got about 6 or 7 times as many views as the one I posted on mine.
So what you think TikTok is?
Yeah, I would say so. I think if there's deliberate connotation in there, then it's kind of being kept quiet. Yeah.
Yeah, but then again, TikTok is supposed to be run by China, so that doesn't work, does
Well,
it?
it doesn't make a whole bunch of sense, does it? But at the same time, quite a lot of their political decisions don't make a whole bunch of sense, to be perfectly honest. If you took the Chinese idea into it, I don't know whether they're like franchises. So when we connect, I'm connecting to some sort of like UK based server, so it would be UK based policies. I'm not 100% sure how it works, to be fair. But I have thought a few times that it kind of like when you actually think of the Chinese communist sort of policies versus what actually goes on. I mean, yeah, I'm really shocked that they don't clamp down on lots and lots of things that seem to be okay. And then other things do get censored that you can't see what there'd be a problem with.
Yeah, there's a very good new video out. I think it's on Novara TV channel on YouTube, and it's with Norman Finkelstein,
Hmm.
who, as you can probably tell from the name, his parents were involved in the Holocaust and everything,
Yeah.
and but he's also done quite a lot of work on the kind of situation in Gaza. So it was Piers Morgan had him on the show, and he really kind of schooled him on the history of things, and he was kind of going, you know, are you prepared to condemn this atrocity and all that? And he said he was, but he said, we don't know. I don't know, and you don't know, Piers, as it were, what it's like to be born in a concentration camp.
Mm.
And this population is born in that situation where you don't have freedom of movement, you don't have enough food, everything is controlled and everything, and you just can't tell how you would react by the time you get to about 20, after 20 years of living like that. And I think that's true. It's clearly an issue, because you just grown up in such deprivation and hardship, and this kind of stuff. So,
Of course, yeah.
So it was a really interesting thing, because he was very fair. This guy's like a scholar, and I think he's written a book on Palestine, and because he's Jewish and everything, he's got a particularly interesting perspective about it, especially given what happened to his parents and everything.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. I'll have to check that out. I'm not a fan of Piers Morgan interviewing anyone, to be perfectly honest. But
this is Navarro.
Nice to be correct.
This is Navarro talking about the interview. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay.
Yeah. Piers Morgan has got he's always got 2 or 3 questions that he's got lined up to ask anybody. It's a little bit like when he asked the vegans, avocados and and what is it? The almond milk comes out, doesn't it? So
yeah.
So it is a bit kind of like that. This guy actually brought up the case of Susan Boyle. Remember Susan Boyle, the singer?
Oh yeah. Is it X Factor or whatever?
Something like that.
I do remember the older lady that sung like classic, like opera sort of music. She had a really good voice.
Yeah. So Piers Morgan was one of the panel, right? I think it was called Britain's Got Talent.
Yeah, right. Okay, same thing as far as I'm concerned. Shit, but yeah, carry on.
Yeah. And so this guy said, "Look, I'm a book person. I'm old-fashioned, so I don't really know much about programs, but I did see that, and I think he was trying to simplify the answer so Piers Morgan could understand it." And he said, and so when Simon Cowell said to Susan Boyle, after they revealed this incredible voice, how come you've not been discovered yet? And she said, well, I've never had a chance. And he said, that's exactly the same as being born in Gaza, only 20 times worse.
Yeah.
That you're born in a situation of not having a chance. So it's really quite interesting stuff.
Yeah, and I suppose, I mean, yeah, I can see the sort of comparison that he's making. I mean, one is obviously a hell of a lot worse than the other one, but we're talking about potentially, the societal constricts that would have stopped her ever being given that opportunity based on the way she looked or whatever it was that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. It was. I mean, it sounded like at first
she wasn't a young lady, was she, when she got that opportunity?
In her 50s, I believe.
So I would imagine that she'd been honing she'd probably been able to sing for a good portion of that time. So yeah, you could imagine she'd been failed or rejected or been ignored countless times before that, whereas the talent would have always been there.
Yeah, well, I think the interesting point was that as soon as he starts talking about Susan Boyle, you're thinking, blimey, this is a bit weird. This is a bit banal, But it ended up that the point was very profound in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. I can understand that point he's making. That's because we do that with stuff. We do that with stuff all the time, and even worse than that, sometimes we've created a society that a lot of times people do that to themselves without even any necessary people doing it for them. Just to the point where I'm not good enough, so there's no point. You don't even necessarily need to have been ignored by anyone. That's took bravery or confidence to even put it out there in the first place. But some people can't even get to that first level to even be ignored. They just ignore themselves.
Indeed. Andy, can you alter the kind of format again so we can see more of the chat? Because I can only see one line at a time. I know that because you're the host, you can kind of do this thing where you can swipe and then you can see it very clearly, can't you?
Is it this one?
Yeah, I don't have that.
I'm getting the same silly message that I got last week. Layout couldn't be changed while you expand yourself.
Well, stop expanding yourself.
I don't know what it means, otherwise I would.
Because I mean, we don't need all those request boxes.
No, when I click the box to remove them, that's when it's telling me that I can't expand.
Oh, do you think it means you've got to set it up before you come on air? You think?
You never use, unless they've changed it. You never obviously used to be able to. I used to be able to change it before. Oh, hang on, that did something.
Yeah, it's just gone back to where it was. Oh,
No.
and then yeah, that was a bit weird. That looked like you dressed up as David Bowie in Ashes to Ashes.
Let's try again, and then go back to that one. Otherwise, it's not going to let me change it even from here. There we go. Now is it better?
Oh yeah, there you go.
There you go.
That's good. Yeah, that's good.
Okay, so in future, if we get stuck on the, you can't expand yourself, you have to go out of everything and start again. I don't know what expand yourself is supposed to translate as.
Exercise.
But yeah, okay, right. Worked out what expand means. Cancel, basically. Cancel everything and start again.
Okay. Yeah.
So
Let's see.
is that better for everyone?
Well, it's certainly better for me because Spider Buzz. There was a vegan ad banned about yogurt.
About yogurt?
Because.
Oh, was that anything to do with? Is that a Viva campaign? I remember they did a campaign, didn't they, where they had the yogurt and it looked like entrails and
Oh
blood.
yeah, with the blood and all that. In
Yeah,
fact,
yeah. That's the only thing I can think of to do with yogurt.
it was a Muller Light thing, wasn't it?
That's right. Yeah, I think I'm
You
sure
know
it was Viva, wasn't it?
the corner thing that was Viva. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
Because Ronnie
yeah.
and I did. We actually looked at. Gillette was on the TV. In fact, I think she was on the Morgan show.
Oh, really?
And of course he brought up the almonds and the
Of course, yeah.
yeah. So there you go.
Yeah, I bet that showed her. I bet that really put veganism to bed, bringing up the same argument over and over and over again.
Yeah, because I think she said, "No, come on, Piers, don't do that to me. You know, you done it to everybody else," kind of thing. So, oh
He
yeah,
ate
Spider
yogurt.
he ate yogurt in front of her. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, but then again, he does that, doesn't he? Because
To be fair, yeah, as things go, that's probably quite tame for Piers just to eat a yogurt. Normally gets like a takeaway brought in or something ridiculous and goes to, the lengths of really going to town.
I hope nobody ever has to talk to him about artificial insemination. God knows what he'd do.
It is boring. And you'd think that, after at least half a dozen or so guests now that he's had exactly the same conversation with and got told exactly the same thing by each one of them in a different way, that it just at least just for his own audience sake, just move on.
Yeah, the only problem is that a lot of the guests don't kind of tell him about the the polls amongst vegans, which find that avocados are not that popular anyway, and the main thing is that almond milk is very unpopular amongst vegans.
Yeah.
So it turns out that the market for almond milk is the health food market, not vegans.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so apparently,
just as we touched on last week a little bit, even when you just think of it in terms of basic maths, like the lactose people outnumber us significantly.
the lactose intolerant people.
Need to be taken into consideration, and as I say, they far outnumber us in terms of a worldwide population. So a lot of these plant-based products are potentially being consumed by them that have got nothing to do with us. If every vegan stopped buying this particular product, unless it was one of a very few select vegan-only products, then the vast majority of companies would just carry on as normal. They wouldn't even notice that we didn't exist anymore because we make up such a tiny percent of their market.
I thought we were responsible for all the
Yeah,
almond.
I know that's the kind of the accusation, but it's really silly when you actually think about it. But because in one hand, all these people, including peers, will go, well, you only make up such a tiny percentage. Why should we listen to you? You're almost insignificant. But in the same breath, it's like, well, all of this is your responsibility. All of this is because of your consumption. All of this is because of you. And it's like, well, we can't be both a huge factor and insignificant at the same time. Which one is it? Is our tiny amount of numbers the factor? In which case, I mean, that has to be reflective and consistent. We also have to factor in our tiny little numbers couldn't possibly influence any of these markets. We wish they could. We wish they could, because then we could influence some change. But whilst the numbers are so small, we are insignificant in regards to everything else. We really are. There's no argument there. It's just very frustrating to see the same things purported over and over again when you know there's no research gone into that. Zero. Like, it's not like someone's actually spent a day looking at these subjects and they've come to the conclusion that it's the vegans at fault. They've literally listened to a sound bite.
Yeah, well, I think it just points to how awesome vegans are to be totally insignificant and all powerful at the same time.
Yeah, wow. Maybe that is our special ability.
Yeah, I mean
We
that's
blend into the shadows, but we really do hit the markets big time.
so. There's a big argument going on about what's in cow milk, apart from just the milk, of course.
Yeah.
There is well, certainly in North America. I don't know about Britain and Ireland, but certainly there is X amount of pus cells allowed in cow milk, isn't there? Per
I'm sure there's I don't know what the percentage is off the top of my head, but I'm sure that's the same in the UK.
yeah, I'd say probably is as well. Cow's milk is okay, spiritual vegan, if you're a calf.
Yeah, I mean, it's perfectly designed for you if you're a calf.
It is indeed.
But for a human being, not so much. Which is why so many people weirdly reject it.
Spider, I didn't understand the vegan yogurt ad. Well, I can't quite remember it now. I think
I don't know the advert now, so I don't know what it was in it.
it was a play. It was a play on. It was a kind of play on the idea of having that corner thing, which you got jam or something, isn't it? And they substituted that bit with blood to make a point. I mean, the point is I mean, from an animal rights point of view, it doesn't matter because I mean it's just full of rights violations. Whatever is the constituents of it. So.
Advert showed a woman eating blood and organs, and I'm just like, what? Well, it's potentially depicting that there's no milk or dairy without death. That essentially the meat industry is the dairy industry when it comes to bovines. They are one and the same thing.
Yeah, it's funny. I did an analysis of this advert. I can't remember anything about it now, though.
I mean, that's the metaphoric thing, and then obviously in terms of seriousness, then obviously there is blood and other things that are naturally contained in the milk. So it's kind of, I suppose it'll be covering a few different angles. But yeah, I mean, I assumed anyway. I mean, I suppose you can definitely take it literally, and I suppose there was some definite intent there. But I looked at it more as though these industries are one and the same. If you want dairy, i.e., your yogurt, it comes with blood, guts, and death because they are one and the same.
Do you think it was aimed at vegetarians quite a lot then? This advert.
Well, it should be with the what I would like to think. I don't know. I mean, I don't know whether that's an accident and that's just really, really sort of like, I don't know, genius in that sense, or whether that was intended. But yeah, absolutely, it should be aimed at vegetarians if that's the point. And I mean, for Viva to do it, considering they used to, well, they still are, I suppose, on Company's House, aren't they? They're still a vegetarian organisation in name. Perfect sort of target audience for them to put that out. Yeah, in the sense that if you think that you're doing the right thing by just not consuming flesh, every time that you're consuming dairy, you are. Maybe not you.
I think Jim has not understood your point. There is no blood, guts, and death in milk.
Well, I'm not talking about physically, although I would definitely argue that there's probably some blood and pus in there. But we're talking about in terms of there is no way to get dairy without.
Association and
Yeah.
involvement.
You've either got a calf's life taken almost instantly, or eventually, when they're spent, where do they end up? In the slaughterhouse. So therefore, all dairy constitutes flesh. Like those markets are one and the same. And a huge amount of the quote unquote beef that people consume are actually dairy cows. So there's your blood and guts. Not necessarily in the bottle, literally, but definitely the association is there.
I have real world experience in the logistics behind it and I think that's half a sentence. I mean, one thing that that Spiderbus said, which was interesting, was that not being put off from. I still love yogurt, and it doesn't put me off. But the point is, I wouldn't kind of put it that way. I wouldn't be looking for things that are going to kind of give you the kind of yuck factor.
Yeah.
I'd be talking about animal rights and rights violations and stuff. Regardless of whether it looks appealing or not.
Yeah, I mean, because those examples exist without any change in terms of mentality. Look at how many times someone's posted like a picture of their KFC where it's got like an eye or some other recognizable body part in, and they've complained, but it's never stopped them eating KFC. They just want a little bit of attention and compensation about the time that they noticed a recognizable part. But it's not like they see. I mean, I've never ever seen one of those pictures where they've gone, I'm no longer going to exploit animals. I'm going to go vegan because I found an eyelid in my piece of KFC. It just puts them off for a week or so. They put a post on the internet about it and then they go back to doing exactly the same thing. So even with the grotesque factor, even if it exists, there's no like sustainability with it.
Vegan living, hello.
Hey, feel free to jump on if you want to join us. But yeah, I mean that's something that what should bother you should be the morality of it, the fact that it's wrong, the fact that it's a rights violation, whether it's grotesque, whether it's disgusting, whether it's gory, none of that really should matter. Obviously, in terms of shock factor, there's always going to be a difference there. But in terms of whether it's right or wrong, whether there's any blood or guts or anything else should be irrelevant, really.
Well, one thing you can't take out of the system, because Jim is saying you don't understand the system. One thing that can't be taken out of the system are the rights violations.
Yeah, I mean, the system doesn't matter whether we're talking about 5-star standards in the UK where cows I'm getting all hypothetical here. I'll give you the best of the best. Cows have their babies. They remain with them for life, regardless of their gender. Everything's hunky-dory. Eventually, once they can no longer produce any more milk, where are they going? Because it's not a sanctuary, is it, to spend out their days in retirement? Even in the best of the best facilities, they're still going to the slaughterhouse.
Some farmers will claim that, won't they?
Yeah, well, show us the examples, but they're few and far between, and it's also very difficult. I know from experience. I mean, this is sort of in the farmer's favour a little bit. It's very difficult to have the correct paperwork for some of these places and stuff anyway. Like they're not easy animals to move around and stuff, so it's not as simple as that. But it doesn't happen, does it?
Just like in life, in death they provide food. They're a resource in life and death. Yeah, well, yeah, of course, but that's what we're talking about the morality of using others as resources. Yeah, Jennifer says that's the problem.
Yeah. Yeah, it is literally the problem. The problem that we see is that we see them as resources. We see them as how can they best serve us. And not only do they serve us in one particular way, but we're actually quite happy that they serve us in multiple ways, as though that makes it justified.
The thing is, though, I mean, in some ways, the chat today even has kind of exposed the problem of concentrating on red tractors and yuck factors and
Yeah.
high welfare and welfare kind of problems and whether there's any blood in milk and everything. All of that from an animal rights point of view is pretty irrelevant.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when it comes to dairy, for example, we can completely take farming out of the equation. And there's an account on here. They have me blocked, so I can't remember exactly the name, but I'm sure it's the Krishnu Sanctuary. That's essentially a resting place for cows. And the guy's rescued multiple cows, but he still milks them. He still uses them. He still creates cheese from their resources. So they're all still being used, they're all still being exploited, they're all still being commodified, regardless of whether they're living on a sanctuary, regardless of whether their status is rescued. In terms of treatment, it's excellent. In terms of care and standards and welfare, excellent. In terms of use, tick.
There's an interesting thing from Spiderbuzz to Jim. I mean, you are a farmer, so you probably get hassled all the time by vegans. You mean having these kind of conversations?
Well, I was going to say, Jim, to be fair, spends quite, obviously we've not been live for a little while, but before the little break, Jim spent quite a lot of time in our lives, to be fair. So I would like to think that he feels that he definitely does get a chance to speak and everything else. And I wouldn't like to think that he felt hassled, as he wouldn't keep coming back. It's interesting to have different perspectives. Obviously, we don't see eye to eye on everything, and we've kind of got different views in terms of opposites for the most part, but that doesn't mean that we can't have a good dialogue and a conversation.
Well, Jim is suggesting that's what he can't do. He said he only not in real life. In other words, no hassle from vegans in real life, just on social media.
Yeah.
Love to have a proper conversation with one and educate them. But educate away, Jim. What do you want to tell us?
Yeah, one of the
There's
things we've
plenty
talked
of vegan
about,
farmers.
I would love to go to one of these 5-star places and do like a video sort of diary there and allow the farmer to have as much of a platform as they want, so they can literally sell this to me as, look how well they are looked after, look how great these facilities are, look how brilliant it all is, because I can still turn around at the end of it and say that's all great. However, we're not here to ask for a more comfortable setting. It's the use of them that's the problem. It's the fact that they're being oppressed, the reason I'm vegan. It's not how you oppress them or the conditions in which their oppression exists. It's the fact that they're oppressed, full stop. In the same way that if Israel gave every Palestinian a 5-star luxury room in the Hilton, but continued to treat them in the same way everywhere else, that's not a solution to the problem. That's better treatment.
Yeah, that's what we want. More Hiltons in Gaza.
But that's essentially the same thing. Giving them a nicer environment to be impressed in is obviously it's better. It's better in terms of the existence that they have, but it's not the existence that they deserve. It's not the existence that their rights entitle them to, which is freedom and autonomy.
Matty boy, vegans want a happy fairy tale reality where it's all sunshine and rainbows. Nothing wrong with sunshine and rainbows. The harsh reality is that it's impossible. What's impossible?
I think that the fairy tale, i.e., everyone's going to go vegan overnight, that is impossible. But I don't think anyone realistically thinks that that's ever going to happen, ever.
I don't think that's what they're talking about. I think he's talking about something else, but I'm not sure. Yeah. What fairy tale?
But
The
the
system we
system
have now is not
provides
perfect.
food for millions of
Um,
individuals. If it was just changed in a different way so that we didn't feed billions of other animals, then we could feed billions of individuals and have loads left over.
it's such a weird thing, this, because the vegan community and the vegan movement have been addressing that issue since the
Since
1940s.
1944, yeah. Pretty much one of the first things that's ever been talked about is the fact that this causes worldwide starvation, and that if we use these resources in a different way, then we could potentially solve those problems. Yeah, it's in some of the first vegan issues.
Yeah, and then we'd be able to feed every human being on the planet.
Yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
at least we would be able to, in terms of amount of food. Whether we'd have the political will to do it is another matter. Diametrically opposed opinions. I believe livestock are resources. You don't. That's true. I don't think that they're livestock either. That's an industry term that I wouldn't use myself.
Yeah, that once upon a time also used to refer to people.
It costs a hell of a lot more to produce vegan synthetic food substitutes and supplements. Well, you're wrong about the supplements, but also if you're talking about vegan meats and cheese and everything, it actually costs a lot less because there's no rights violations in it, which is the highest cost that the cows and other victims pay. Of course, is that with their lives, so you can have
Yeah,
that kind of stuff.
and I mean, we're just talking literally about supply and demand. If there was a hell of a lot more people buying these plant-based alternatives, and then the subsidies started getting moved in different directions and things like that, then people would realize what the true cost of dairy, for example, actually was. And I don't just mean in rights violations, I'm talking about just in actual pounds or euros. You know, there's a huge deduction on all of these markets to make sure that you continue to buy them.
Yeah, that is true. And also, a plant-based diet is fruit and vegetables.
Yeah.
So, it costs exactly the same to produce fruit and vegetables for me than it does for you.
Absolutely. And in fact, if more people were eating fruit and vegetables, for example, we'd look at new ways of farming them, or the price would naturally come down either way. So like if that's what the problem is, the fact that it costs more, these are easy problems to solve. They just need more people.
There's an interesting question about 1944 for you, Andy.
Well, hang on, let me scroll up and miss some of these. How far have we got? Oh, 1944, was that because of the Holocaust happening that people turned vegan? Yeah, forced because they probably didn't know about it when they were having these conversations, because obviously the internet didn't exist and news took a while to filter out from country to country and then get back everywhere else. But absolutely the atrocities of, to quote, I think it's the Vegan Issue 5 directly, the cruelties that man afflict upon other man or men. So yeah, absolutely what was going on all around them was a significant factor of wanting to find peace, of wanting to find a solution to these things. They literally saw a direct correlation between what humans were doing to other humans versus what humans had been doing to non-humans for a very long time.
And they did see veganism as part of the peace movement.
Yeah, absolutely. And as a proposed solution to all of these things.
All right, so we're talking about, Jaipur et al. Oxford study, 2018. A vegan world would require 70% less cropland.
But they were put to death, they weren't eaten. That's very true, but also veganism isn't just about food. Don't forget. Think about all the animals that are murdered for their skin, their flesh, their feathers, their fur. Whether it's for their bones, whether it's for their horns, all these other things are all still commodification and objectification. So Yeah, in exactly the same way that people in camps were tested on, or they were experimented on, or all sorts of other things. It's exactly how we treat animals in vivisection. A lot of the experiments that were done on human beings, we still do on other animals. A lot of the tests that were come up then, we still do them on other animals. So yeah, there's all direct correlations. It's not just about food.
Also, I don't think comparing is the right word. They were just talking about values.
Yeah.
Their values were peaceful values. They valued justice. They didn't want to exploit anyone. That was the main word that they used. I mean, they did use words like cruelty and well, they didn't use. Can you remember them using oppression? I think Cross might have said
Oppression
oppression.
isn't used at the very beginning. It comes in a little bit later. But
Yeah.
also, just to go back, I mean, the fact that there is a sentence that said the cruelties of man against other man, the fact that cruelty once upon a time, it certainly did in 1944, had a much stronger connotation than it does now. Because I mean, if we were talking about what was going on in Palestine, I would never describe that as cruel. It's far worse than cruel. Cruel isn't anywhere near enough to justify it. Whereas back then, that is the sentence that was used to describe what was going on all around them at that time. I mean, that's another key part of this. This wasn't written 20 years after the war finished. This was written as the war was going on. This was written as the war was, in the middle of it. People were dying every single day.
Okay, so you're saying the animal holocaust doesn't exist. Who said that? I mean, these are loaded terms. I mean, I don't know whether that's the point of bringing that point up, but yeah, I mean, the animal holocaust is probably the biggest of all the holocausts.
Yeah,
I
and
mean,
it started and was already in existence before.
actually, interesting to know. I'm not quite sure whether they say it in any interviews or anything, Andy, but be interested to know when people involved in the Second World War, when they actually found out the details of what we now call the Holocaust.
Well, I mean, obviously I've watched documentaries and stuff before, but from what I remember, it took a while to spread properly everywhere.
Yeah,
Because
like the
I
existence
think
of
if I remember
concentration
rightly,
camps and stuff, and
I
what
can't
was
remember the name of the camp, but if I remember rightly, didn't the first camp actually get discovered by Russian soldiers and they kept it quiet for a little while before the second camp was discovered, and then they kind of come
well,
and said,
there's also that distinction between a labor camp and an extermination camp, and I
yeah,
think that people didn't realize that half the time they were both.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I would imagine it took a while for that information to get out, and then I would imagine also there would have been probably some reluctance to release it, especially in its entirety, because
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit
the
like
last
what's
thing you
going
want to
on.
do is stop new people enlisting.
Yeah, you know what they say, don't they? I mean, even Churchill said this. I think the first casualty of war is the truth. And we know that with
Yeah,
what's going on.
well, you think if you're someone that's just a year or so away from being old enough to being subscribed to the enlisted in the army, and you've just got this information that they've just found all these camps that they've been committing all these, you ain't going to be all that wanted to go. I mean, nobody wanted to really be in it anyway, but your reluctance is going to be even more if that information is going to come out. So I would imagine it was probably trickle fed afterwards. It's not like I said, there's no Google, there's no internet. People can't just find this information out for themselves. It would have taken time.
Matty Boy is saying, as long as there are people, there will be conflict. And I suppose the evidence is on your side. We could concede that, but I mean, surely peace is a valuable aspiration to aim for. Surely. I mean, just think of the environmental cost that's going on around the world now in terms of warfare. Just that alone, at the time when the Earth is struggling, we're chucking missiles at each other and rolling tanks all over the place.
Yeah, and then go one step further and factor in how much one of those missiles costs and how much good that money could actually do, how many people it could feed, how many
How many
people it
people it
could
could
clothe.
feed? Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
how many it could provide shelter for instead of taking shelter away, how many lives it could build rather than destroy. Like, yeah,
I mean, don't
and
don't they
it's a
say
long
that
term
if
effect too, isn't it? There's a really good article actually that I need to get around to narrating where Kathleen Janaway talks about, I think it might have been Sudan, but basically I'll have to double check. But there's somewhere that had suffered quite serious bombing, and she's talking about how long it will take for some of that soil to be able to be planted in again, like decades potentially. So it's not just the instant devastation. It's not just the destruction that's there now. It's how long it takes for the world to repair.
Matty Boy is saying, I think, there is nothing peaceful about it. I think they're talking about veganism. Well, that is one of the foundational values of veganism, along with justice and non-violence.
Yeah.
I mean, some of the early vegans were conscientious objectors because they said that they wouldn't kill anyone of whatever species.
Yeah, and just in case anyone's not aware, because I wasn't until I did the research, but a conscientious objector isn't someone that's just frowned upon in society. You actually had your rations kind of penalised. You'd literally live on a pittance, and there'd be certain things that you'd no longer be eligible for, jury service, all of these kind of things. You were kind of like seen as a lower member of society for simply wanting peace. So it wasn't just the fact that obviously people would shun you, but you genuinely struggled. You would literally go without, your rations would be limited.
Well, the thing is, I mean, I think it wasn't until either close to or the Second World War itself where you could get away with being a CO without being killed, I think. Yes, I think in the
Yeah,
First
or
World
the
War.
absolute least jailed. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
You know, and if you think about like Russia and other countries, if well, all the way through the war, if they didn't want to fight anymore or showed any cowardice as it was claimed whatsoever, they were killed as well by their own soldiers.
Yeah, which is one reason why there is a lot of stats about how infrequent or how frequent soldiers miss their target.
Yeah.
And so like that's why some generals and all that argued that a professional army is much more valuable than a conscripted army.
Yeah.
That doesn't want to be there.
Of course. I mean, what's the absolute best that any of them could get out of it? To go home. To go back to everything that they had before the war, if it still exists.
If it's still there, yeah.
Yeah, that's the best that can come out of it. Plenty
It
of
must be
gains
such a
for
weird
few white
feeling that.
people. And they start dividing up the land and the duchies and all these kind of things, but that's not the people fighting the battles. It's not the people dying.
Yeah, it's a weird thing, isn't it? All these working class people from all over the place get shunted off to war zones, and then if they're lucky enough to survive, they go back, or at least they try and go back to where they came from, not knowing if all their family is still there, or even if the buildings that they once knew and lived in are still there.
Absolutely, yeah. And then I suppose if you go even further than that now, even if you come back and everything is intact and your particular place of residence wasn't affected in any way, shape or form, you've still got all the restrictions placed on your own mental health, or you can't get a job, or all these things. Look at how many homeless people there are that have served in various armed forces around the world that get no support whatsoever once they've gone back. Look at how many people have got PTSD or other mental afflictions because of what they've witnessed or what they've been part of, that more or less get cut off because they're no longer of any service. Like, it's not just the fact that you might come back to nothing. Even if you come back to everything, it's not the same. I'm just trying to catch up with the chat. There's quite a lot of chat.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Quite a lot of conversation going on.
Every single living thing ever, anywhere, is food for something else at some point. Yeah, but kind of so what?
Yeah.
I mean, that doesn't mean, that we've got to just cheerfully kill and cheerfully oppress.
Especially when we know there are other ways of doing it where that can be massively, massively reduced.
Or eliminated. And also, of course, that there are a heck of a lot of herbivores on the planet.
Yeah.
Now, I know that when they die, they will become food, but they're not looking to make others into food. So,
No, I
it's
mean,
not, this thing about, nature in, red in tooth and claw and all this kind of stuff. It's not quite as like that in real life.
no.
There will never be a peaceful world. It's an aspiration worth wanting and fighting for, surely. I mean, that is such a pessimistic view, isn't it? There'll never be a peaceful world, so I don't have to bother being peaceful in my own life. I mean, where does that work?
But that's the reason that there isn't a peaceful world right now. It's because not enough people want it.
Ollie loves chicken nuggets.
Or even more
yeah,
so,
we don't doubt it, but what you love doesn't answer any moral questions.
No.
And there are some pretty horrible examples of that if you think about human rights and what people love.
Yeah, absolutely.
But war has nothing to do with veganism. Well, we're at war with other animals, aren't we? And of course, Kathleen Janaway in the 1990s did say that a vegan world with vegan values could eliminate poverty and could eliminate war. That vegans wouldn't prioritize things like that. I mean, they do say that if the arms industry just stopped buying arms for about 8 hours, that would be enough to feed everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've got to think about the mentality shift. If the people who right now were making the decisions and were organizing troops to move from one place or whatever, were responsible for the various atrocities that go on around the world, if all of those were vegan, then their first thought whenever a problem occurred wouldn't be to kill everyone, to blow it up, to send the troops in. So that would make a significant difference right away. Because we try and find a peaceful resolution, which never seems to be even on the cards at the moment anywhere. First sign of trouble, bomb. First sign of trouble, sanction. First sign of trouble, cut them off. If there was a completely different shift in mentality, this is why it is a big concept, but it's also a very simple concept. It's just a justice for all, a peace for all concept. If everyone had that kind of mindset, their first thought wouldn't always be violence. And as soon as you establish that there was ways to do this and achieve X without violence, without rights violations, that's the route that you would take going forward. And every time that you met a boundary or a stumbling block, you would look for ways and methods where you could achieve what you wanted to without rights violations. That would be the difference. We don't have that right now. At the moment, it's just like, well, fuck who gets in the way. We want this. Who cares who the victims are?
Yeah, it's kind of like what we really need as a species is a large dose of humility.
Yeah, absolutely.
And to see ourselves as just one species on the planet. Not the ruling class, and just to kind of like just calm down a little bit in terms of what we think we are and what we think that we are permitted to do, even to the extent of thinking that we should have the right to be absolutely everywhere on the planet, regardless of the cost of that.
Yeah.
In terms of our impact on the ecosystem, or even the cost in energy. I mean, that's going to be as the climate crisis escalates. that's going to be one problem, that where we're living is probably going to be too cold eventually, because we won't be able to, you know, heat the houses and stuff. We're going to have to move probably to places like Spain and stuff.
Yeah, which is already, to be fair, it's already starting to happen. It'll get to the point as well where people just won't be able to afford to do that, and that'll be their decision. Yeah, it'll actually be cheaper for them to emigrate than it will for them to live in this country. But I will say, which is sort of a little bit positive and a little bit inspiring. I've probably never seen more people than I have recently that understand what's potentially going on in Palestine at the moment and can kind of empathize with the situation. They can see oppression for what it is, even though they're not the victims, even though it's not happening to them. There's actually like that respect extended. They actually recognize this. So that's quite inspiring because, for a long time I've been told by, well, a lot of vegans that people are too stupid to understand these concepts, which is why we've got to talk about treatment and welfare, when in reality, no, they absolutely understand what oppression is. And the problem is, as it always was, speciesism. If they can just extend that what's happening to those people is not okay, it's not acceptable, it's absolutely fundamentally wrong, and we can recognize that from all this way away, then why can't we just
Very
extend?
arrogant and elitist, isn't it? This idea that people are a little bit too simple to be able to
Yeah, of course,
understand concepts like,
it's really rude and disrespectful to think that they can't understand this when they absolutely can, clearly. And almost always, as it seems to be, those that have gone through some of these sad times or dark times themselves or been oppressed in some way, shape, or form are normally the easiest to understand and relate. And they do, regardless of whether they're vegan or not. So it absolutely shows that people are more than capable of understanding this concept and extending it to others that aren't directly related to them. It just needs to be unlocked with other species. It is there. Yeah, that is potentially always the same with these various other conflicts. It's the same with where was the world in Afghanistan until people started talking about they couldn't get the dogs out, until Penn Farthing got involved. No one cared about what Al Qaeda was doing. No one cared about any of that stuff for years. Like this is a problem. It really is, and it kind of relies on the fact that people only know about what's going on when it's on the media, and normally the information that they're given through the media is obviously not exactly the truth, or it's a very warped version of the truth, a very one-sided version of the truth. But the truth is these conflicts, these wars, these atrocities are going on everywhere all the time for the most part, even if they're not being talked about. And apps like TikTok and Instagram and stuff like that have, for the first time ever, given us an insight into some of these things. It's almost like they can't keep it a secret anymore because you can find out even when CNN or Sky News or BBC don't talk about it. The journalists or the people that are living those experiences and going through them are talking about it.
yeah, it's like the Falklands War was the first one where the squaddies ended up having a voice afterwards. It wasn't
Yeah.
just the generals who wrote the history of it and stuff.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're literally living in an age at the moment where you can live stream genocide. I mean, literally, you could probably scroll up 2 or 3 times and you'll find live that's showing you something. Yeah, it's kind of madness to think about, really.
Yeah,
That
it is scary. Can you see Spider Buzz's comment in answer to Jenny? So trying to stop people eating meat and caring about animals doesn't change that. So trying to stop people caring about animals, I'm sure I'm reading that wrong, but I do want to address that first bit. So trying to stop people eating meat. The actual thing is that we're trying to construct an argument that will stop, which would get you to stop you eating meat, because you see the argument and you see that it's wrong to do that. It's not a question of you being, forcibly prevented. We want you to decide not to on moral grounds.
Yeah, I mean that's a really key part. Like we hear all the time that people say you can't do this. It's not a question of can't, it's a question of won't. Like in the same way that I'm sure that if you walked past a shop window and saw something that you liked, the idea of smashing the glass and just taking it isn't at the top of your list. Well, the idea of using an animal isn't at the top of ours. We've realised that there's something wrong there, or this is why we won't use these actions or we won't commit these actions. So we want you to come to that same understanding where it's not a case of you can't eat meat anymore. It's a case of you see that meat as someone that you wouldn't want to, I don't know, be part of the exploitation of. Then you know you've got a choice not to. Why would you choose to do that? That's the difference here. It's not, we're not trying to take anything away from you. We're trying to stop you taking something that was never yours. But you've got to come to that conclusion yourself.
Yeah, I mean, this is that ridiculous kind of vegans forcing argument, which we get all the time, of course.
Yeah, and it wouldn't work even if we had that ability, because you've got to come to that idea yourself. You've got to have that realization. Otherwise, there's going to be no sustainability there. In the same way that going back to the whole, it's gory, it's grotesque. That's got no sustainability either, because there's no ethics there. That's just shock value.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because it does kind of like bring up, the kind of futility often of banning things. Because if you ban things that people still want to do, we know through prohibition and lots of different examples that people will still do them, or they'll resist the control that you're trying to place on them. Whereas obviously the best thing is for them to be convinced that they don't want to do it, rather than have the power to stop them doing what they want to do. That's never a good solution.
No, not at all. You tried to convince me. I've never tried to convince you. If I genuinely actually wanted to put some time into convincing you, I'd say, look, let's go for a beer. Me replying to comments that you've left on TikTok is not me trying to convince you. Most of the time, I'm speaking to other people that read your comments. As we've just said, it's in the same way that, look at this. If you think that, I don't know, setting fire to people's property is okay, I'm not going to be able to convince you that it isn't. You've got to come to that determination yourself. I can give you information that proves that it's not okay. I can show you statistics. I can show you victims, all of this sort of thing. But if you think that it's okay, no one can change your mind but you. You have to come to that yourself. You have to come to that realization yourself, in the same way that you have about all the other things that you personally consider immoral. No one else has convinced you that they're immoral, because if they did, you'd rebel against it. It's a kind of natural thing. You've come to or you've either been schooled in that from a very young age, i.e., if I touch the fire, I'm going to get burnt, and you made that realization and you've stuck with you, or you've come to a conclusion that this is wrong and I don't act this way, or I don't do this particular thing. So it would be the same. You have to come to that conclusion yourself. But once you have, it is as natural as anything else. I don't think, oh, I miss eating these things, or miss doing these things, or I'm losing this. I don't see it as any of those things. I see it now as I no longer take what isn't mine anymore, and I feel much better about that. I no longer take rights from others. I no longer exploit the rights of others as much as I humanly can. And I feel much better about that.
Well, there's one of our language issues brought up by Spiderbuzz, answering Jenny again. No, I wouldn't. Yeah, I eat meat. So there's one language issue, and be called an animal abuser.
Yeah,
So
well,
that's
that,
not the
yeah.
language that Andy and I use.
No, I mean, I don't necessarily think that that works in any way, shape, or form to call a consumer an animal abuser, because I just think that you're kind of alienating them away from the point. What they are actually is potentially either ignorant to or unaware of what they're actually contributing to, for the most part.
Yeah, but also I think Spiderbuzz would agree that they are an animal user.
Yeah.
What they don't like is the idea that they're an animal abuser, right?
Yeah, well, but and I'm sure whilst he's in here, Spider Buzz, or I think it's Matt, isn't it? Yeah, yeah. you can sort of come back to this. Is it because the idea of animal abuse or the idea of an animal abuser in today's society and in our sort of linguistics of it is someone that would kick a dog unnecessarily? It's someone that would do something that would be in the newspaper or the RSPCA would prosecute for.
Yeah, that would be a good question to be asked, because if you ask people about being an animal abuser, and talk about other people, say, what do you think of animal abusers? Oh, I really dislike them. Well, what are they doing that you dislike? And they always talk about kicking dogs and all that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Kurt Zuma's one of the first examples that people bring up for exactly that reason, because it's kind of a famous cat kicking incident that most people are aware of. Yeah, they never think of like a cow being milked. That's never the example because
Yeah, and the and
they're
the
like
woman
real
the woman
animal
who
abuse.
threw the cat into a wheelie bin,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Mary Bale, I think.
Mary Barrow, that's it. Yeah. Or what's the one that Francione always uses? Was it Michael Vickers?
No, Michael Vick.
Michael Vick, that's it. Yeah, yeah. That's it. They purposely pick the companion animals that are gonna invoke a reaction, and that's what most people consider to be animal abuse. Someone going out of their way to unnecessarily harm a companion animal or an animal that they might consider a pet. They don't think about the animals that are involved in farming, for example. That doesn't enter their mind. So yeah, when they're called an animal abuser, it's something that they, as far as they're concerned, and quite rightfully so in most cases, absolutely they are not. Some of these people that are called animal abusers by vegans probably donate to the RSPCA every month. They're
This-
against animal abuse in terms of what they view animal abuse to be, but they are an animal user.
Spider-Buzz has said, again in reply to Jenny, because I never physically hurt, hurt an animal in my life. So talking about other animals, I never physically hurt one in their entire life. But I mean, presumably you understand the issue of supply and demand, and you understand the issue of purchasing, things that would cause harm. Um, so you might be kind of like removed from that, but you are involved in it.
Yeah, because I mean, if you wanted to extend that in some way, like if you saw someone walking down the road in a particular brand of clothing, you'd never call them a child abuser because there was potentially some sweatshop involved. That would never extend in that way because someone would be really upset to be called a child abuser just for wearing a t-shirt, for example. But that's a similar extension of someone walking down the road drinking a milkshake to be called an animal abuser.
Yeah, Jenny is asking, Spider, you support animal suffering. I think Spider-Buzz is going to say no, they don't, but they do support animal use. It's just that in our culture, which is deeply speciesist, we separate those two things out, which is why we've got groups like the RSPCA and stuff. So this is all kind of part and parcel of the kind of things, Andy, that we've been kind of looking at recently, which is the fact that
Absolutely, yeah.
when vegans talk the language of the RSPCA, it confuses people because we're not really talking about what we want to talk about, which is animal use.
Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of these people have been, well, deceived really into thinking that this just doesn't happen. I mean, how many times have we been told that, well, it's better in the UK. We've got these standards, we've got the best, we've got, that's obviously only happens in third world countries, for example, like because they've been convinced over years of marketing campaigns and odd cases where some horrible place does get exposed and that's in the paper and the RSPCA have shut them down, or like the more recent one with AJP, that sort of stuff. They're convinced and reassured that this stuff doesn't happen, or if it does, it's just one bad apple and then it's fixed.
I'm a bit confused now between the conversation between Jenny and Spider-Buzz, because Spider-Buzz made the claim before that they never physically harmed another animal. But now Jenny has said you support animal suffering, and Spider-Buzz say, yeah, I gladly do. So unless I'm reading that conversation wrong, because it's the way that it comes up on TikTok, that's obviously a contradiction there, right?
Well, yeah, potentially. Even in the way that we were given the benefit of the doubt, RE language, those things are very similar.
Now, how would you reply to Jenny here, Andy? I think saying animal use definitely disconnects from the individual animal. Sounds inanimate. I don't see why that has to be the case.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose I, it is that shock factor that the word abuse gives over the word use, but it's only because the word use hasn't got people aren't looking at it in the way that they should be looking at it. I mean, it's so expansive because it means that we're against this. So if you again to go back to that Krishna sanctuary, if you did an interview with him, if he unblocked me and would come on this live right now, and I said to him, "Do you abuse your animals?" 100% no. He'd probably want to take me to court for defamation for even accusing him of such a thing. But he absolutely uses them. So what happens in that case? How do how do we make people understand that what they're doing is still wrong, what they're doing is still exploitative, what they're doing is still against the rights of the animal that they're doing it to? However, in terms of abuse, quote unquote abuse, what the definition of that word is in their mind, they're not meeting it.
Hmm.
And and I mean, I'm only using him as an example, but you could speak to any farmer that does this themselves, and they're going to tell you that they don't abuse their animals, but they would tell you that, well, yeah, of course I use them.
Yeah, well, if we go back to 1945, which I often do, and Donald Watson's kind of famous kind of statement, he was asked about, what are the principles of veganism, or something to do with vegan values, and he said the vegan society opposes the exploitation of sentient life,
Yeah.
and in those days they used terms like animal exploitation and animal use, or they used animal exploitation, that phrase, to mean animal use. I think that's fairly clear. And so when you're saying, I think saying animal use disconnects from the, because like you're really saying animal exploitation, exploiting another animal
Yeah.
by using them. So I don't see how that disconnects, really. And I don't see how putting animal abuse connects either, because I mean that's as abstract, isn't it? Or maybe I'm wrong there. It's interesting that.
I don't know. A lot of times now, I quite often think of an example. I remember watching a video about this time last year on TikTok, where it wasn't. I don't think it was in the UK. I think it was in America. But there was essentially a big herd of female cows, dairy cows, that were being moved from one place to another, and about 5 or 6 of them clearly had crippled limbs and were really struggling. And someone put on the video which one is suffering. And I'll never forget it, because it's like they don't see this as the problem, as it is. 100+ cows that are just being exploited. They don't see that as suffering. That there is no suffering. It had to be pointed out to them which cow was limping. That's the one that's suffering.
Oh,
They're all
yeah.
suffering.
This is a video of cows kind of crossing a road, aren't they?
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's at least 3 or 4 at the back that are clearly like injured, and there's a couple that are, just walking as part of the herd that have got
And
visible
there's
injuries as
loads
well.
of are limping and
Yeah,
are
that's
lame,
right.
aren't they?
But yeah, it needed pointing out to this person which one's suffering. I mean, in its kind of term, they all are, every single one of them. But yeah, there was no grasping of that.
Yeah, Jennifer said welfare language isn't clear. I think that's true, because, well, also welfare language is welfare language, and then that creates confusion if you try to kind of transmute that into veganism. And I think that's where people suddenly get kind of, well, I'm with you. We're all against animal abuse, but then if you talk it about the kind of flesh I eat, then the all the kind of previously kind of agreements all break down at that stage.
Yeah. Yeah. But there is a huge disconnection with those words. Yeah. I mean, even now, if everyone did a little test right now or after the live and you typed animal abuse into your Google, you're not going to see pictures of pigs, chicken, unless it's an expose of one particular bad apple, for example. Those words won't associate. You will see dogs, cats, rabbits, like you will see companion animals, and you will see cases of extreme cruelty. You will see exceptions. You will not see, farming. You will not see animals that are used for their skin. You won't see the leather industry. You won't see vivisection. You won't see any of those things because they don't fall under that banner. You'll see pictures of dogs and cats. You'll see pictures of dogs tied up, for example, or really skinny, emaciated animals. That's what you'll see.
Wouldn't you get things like SeaWorld and all that?
Maybe. I don't know. I mean, let's try it. Has anyone got a phone to hand? Or if I do it, it will cancel the live. But yeah, I haven't got another device at the minute. If someone Googles animal abuse, I bet you that's what it will be. Dogs, cats, rabbits. It'll be companion animals with unique acts of cruelty by horrible individuals. It will not show you what we're talking about. That's because those things don't compute. Unless it's an extreme example, like I said, somewhere being exposed, and then they're seen as one bad apple, and whoever exposed them, the organization, they get a pat on the back, and it's like, well, we fixed the problem. We can continue exploiting now.
So you just want a search on the phrase animal abuse?
Yeah, just do animal abuse and see what comes up on the pictures.
You want it as a image?
Yeah, do the image one. Although I can tell you it'd be RSPCA, SSPCA, that Dogs Trust. They'll be your links if you do a text-based search. You won't get the Vegan Society.
Photographer exposes animal abuse and suffering worldwide. 23,945 animal cruelty images. Lovely. That's Shutterstock. Okay, I opened that, and the first thing you see, well, there's a mixed bag here. The first thing you see are cats and dogs, but then you get all the not tested on animals, the cartoon things.
Okay, well so there is some vivisection stuff. That's better than I expected. But there's no quote unquote
Then you've
farming.
got dogs. Then you've got a child kissing a pig. It looks like a scene from Babe or something like that. Mention of fur, and then there's vivisection again. So, it's like a content analysis.
But yeah, it's the same. We tried it before, and I think we typed in animal cruelty into the text search, and it's all RSPCA. Contact your local RSPCA. Find your local RSPCA branch. There's no vegan material that comes up, despite the fact that we use that language all the time.
Right. So this one is called animal abuse stock photos and high res pictures. The first thing you get is vivisection.
That's better than I expected. A vivisection of dogs.
Well, the actual very first picture is, and the second, and third, and fourth, fifth, sixth. They're all mice and rats.
Oh wow, that is a surprise. I thought you was going to say rabbits.
And then there's a dog, and then there's some rabbits, and then there's a dog, and then there's dogs, and then we're back to Mises. Yates' Mises to pieces.
Yeah.
And dogs.
So, I mean, I bet you how many pages do you think you'd need to be out before you saw a fish? Probably one of the most quote unquote abused species on the planet, and
we've got some protest pictures, but this is all laboratories again. It's actually interesting the fact that all the vivisection stuff has come up, especially given the fact that it's not even a main priority of the movement anymore.
No, that's surprising, to be honest.
On page 2 now, again, it's all mostly vivisection. Hmm.
I wonder if that's got anything to do with your cookies and search history and stuff like that.
Well, I guess it might be. Now we're starting to get the nude protests and all that kind of rubbish. Overwhelmingly vivisection. Interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, that is interesting.
Then again, when you it just comes up, the very first thing I put animal abuse images. The very first thing that comes up is a box full of pictures, and they're exclusively dogs, I think.
Yeah.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 pictures, all of which are dogs. I'm going to
Yeah.
click on view all.
Which is what I expected. Yeah. Oh, the
Yeah,
other one that
so
might probably
view
see
all
the
is
horses
still
as well.
dogs and dogs and dogs. Doesn't oh, there's one monkey. Tigers. Funny enough, a tiger is the first cat.
Oh wow. Is that a zoo? What's the context of the tiger?
Stop animal abuse against animal cruelty. And then something called fan pop. Whatever that is. You got stop animal abuse. You've got a guy beating a dog with a stick. So these are the kind of images that you were expecting.
Yeah.
Stop animal abuse. True story. Again, there's lots of dogs and people with sticks or baseball bats and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Unnecessary harm. That's essentially what, for most people, animal
Oh,
abuse
here's
is.
the first cat.
And that first word is really important, unnecessary, because hitting a dog with a stick in the vast majority of Western people's minds is completely unnecessary at any point in time. For there are a lot of people, even in training, they're against any kind of those sort of methods. But so for example, a pig being hit with a stick to move down, that's standard. That's how you get a pig to move from A to B. It wouldn't be seen in the same way whatsoever. It's necessary this time. It's necessary in order for them to have bacon, or they just don't know how the process goes. But when they think of animal abuse or animal cruelty, those are the things that pop up in their head. Almost like if you imagine that people's brains are like your Google search and someone comes along and types in animal cruelty into your brain, the things that are going to pop up are going to be those images. It's going to be dogs, cats, horses. You're not going to think dairy cows. You're not going to think broiler hens. You're not going to think pigs or lambs. You're not going to
No,
think.
but that's exactly what that new type of activism is based on. The fact that they know that they're not going to get that, and then the idea is to introduce that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Jennifer says circuses. Yeah, there was some circus shots that came up. A lot of cartoons as well.
Yeah. Well, I suppose that you go back to the sort of popular single issue campaigns, though, don't you? That, a lot of people that don't like circuses or campaign against circuses aren't necessarily vegan. Look at all the vivisectionists that aren't vegan too in their various aspects, whether it's just because they test on beagles or whomever.
Yeah. Also, my results are probably going to be pretty skewed given who I am, I think.
Yeah, I definitely would think that your cookies may well play a role in that too.
Yeah, those damn cookies.
Because I noticed when I was researching for the director's cut, and I was using my dad's computer for a little bit before my new one arrived. I was struggling to find photos and things that I knew I'd seen on Google before, and then as soon as I loaded up and it imported my old Chrome to the new computer, it was like, yeah, it found them all again really quickly, because it's kind of like it gets used to your search terms and the things you're
Yeah. Oh,
looking
it's
for,
you,
and
is it? Yeah.
it shows you the stuff that you've seen before and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, so
Yeah, we know what rocks your boat.
no, hopefully I can. Hopefully, I'm gonna use my Christmas money off my mum and dad to get my computer fixed, because there's a few things that I was already working on that I want to finish, and there's a couple of other things that I'd like to get done as well.
Yeah, well, going back to the story of the van that we started with.
Oh yeah, I forgot you were telling us.
Sorry?
Oh, I forgot you were telling us that story. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a while ago. But yeah, so So he fails his test, and so quite a lot of rust. And apparently, with this particular type of van, which is it's a Mazda van, but they're kind of known. The nickname is Bongo, and they're very very popular in places like Africa and India. And one of the big selling points of this particular van is it's got side doors on both sides, which makes it really really kind of convenient to get into, to unload and this kind of stuff, because you can open essentially, both sides and the back. So as you can imagine, that you can get in there and get stuff out pretty quick. And over the years, I had loads of people wanting to buy the van, off me and stuff, but didn't pass the test, and a lot of rust, which is the main problem with these particular types of vans, apparently. The engine is fine. In fact, according to the guy who runs the sanctuary, probably only about halfway through, its life, kind of thing, the engine. And so that was a bit sad. But essentially, you've got a van which is kind of like rusting away around a good engine.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I already knew that it was going to cost £1,000 to reinsure the van, because insurance, especially of vans, is really expensive in Ireland.
Flipping
And
hell,
then
I'll take that.
you
That's
would?
cheap. That's cheap.
Oh, is it?
Well, for me it is. I don't know about everyone
Oh,
else. Yeah, my insurance is like 1,600 quid, so I'd take £1,000.
oh wow, you must have been a very bad boy somewhere on the
No,
line.
no, I didn't pass. This is my 4th year, so I've only been driving 4 years.
Oh, okay. Oh well, yeah, well that will go against you, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
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 But yeah, and so then we had all the cost of the repairs to think about, and then there was a problem with the lighting, which we kind of knew about. There was some rust in one of the lights. Apparently, replacing the lights would be a few €100 too. So it just got untenable, really,
Yeah.
which is a real shame, Plus the fact that now that we're not on the street as much, I don't kind of need a van as much either. So
Well,
everything
that's
was
the other
kind
part
of going
about it as well,
against it.
isn't it? It's how often you're actually using it.
Yeah, I mean, there's times when I wouldn't touch the van for 2 weeks, so it
Yeah.
was kind of getting to a stage where you think, well, do I really need a van? I mean, we did when we were doing double gazebos and everything at one point, and you couldn't do that at all without a van.
Yeah.
Whereas now, all that has gone now, that kind of
So
outreach.
what's the plan?
Well, obviously a lot more online stuff, but there are a couple of kind of ideas. I'm going to probably try, if I can get it together, to do a special vegan time tunnel about the VIP, because VIP essentially lasted for 10 years, from 2013 to 2023. So I thought I'd do a little thing, because there's one bit where the van got stolen. Didn't I ever tell you about that?
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, I remember you telling me.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's part of the story. So the poor old van went through quite a lot of adventures, really. And the only thing is now that if the sanctuary sells the van, I'm really fearful that somebody involved with animal use is going to buy the van. I'd hate that.
Yeah, of course. Is there not because at Wonky Pets where I used to volunteer, they had a van that was an old, I think it was a Citroen van, not a particularly big one, but it was one that needed quite a bit of work doing on it. It wasn't insured or taxed, but essentially it just used to be used. You used to fill it full of feed and just drive from one end to the other.
Oh no, okay.
So is there like another sanctuary or something that could make use of it in that regard? Especially if the engine's still got a good number of years, or even
Yeah, it could be. But in other words, if it's on private land, you wouldn't
yeah, you
need.
don't need those
Yeah,
things, so you haven't got
yeah.
to fork out the money for insurance or anything like that. Yeah, I mean, I've seen some of these vans where they've chucked a mower on the back and they use it as like a sit and ride mower, and they just drive the car around. So they've got other uses if that's especially if it's still going to be a good runner for X amount of time, and it's got two side doors that make it easy to load and all those kind of things. Just seems a shame.
It does, yeah. It is a real shame. It's kind of an end of an era, really. But I mean, it had to come eventually, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm. Anyway, we're down to three, and we're coming to 2 hours, which I
Well,
didn't
yeah,
expect.
I was going to say we'll go to 10, but I don't know if we'll last till 10 at this rate.
Yeah.
Is
Well,
is
I could
what?
advertise the Humanity Trigger again, the book, but there's only three people.
Well, what I mean, what? So, what have you got on this week coming? What's
Well, we're
your
still finalising Still Alive with Ronnie.
right? So you haven't got a
So,
subject for that yet.
well, there was a video that some vegan influencer put out saying that they wish that vegans wouldn't do about 10, make 10 arguments. Like, they didn't like when vegans said something about, well, you couldn't kill other animals yourself. If you kind of ran into a field and tried to take a bite of a cow, this kind of stuff. That was one of their objections. But there was about eight others. So I thought the idea was to go through that, I think.
Oh, that sounds interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, as I said, the time tunnel would probably be about the VIP if I can get because I mean I've got hundreds and hundreds of pictures. It's just a question of collating it all and kind of concentrating on it.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's definitely something.
It is definitely something.
What's the so what when you going to announce what one of the days before Tuesday? I'm guessing what you're doing.
Oh, I think Ronnie and I will finalize that tomorrow.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
I'm thinking put the event out. Yeah. So yeah. Because I don't think we've done a Still Alive now for 2 weeks.
Yeah, you're working on a 2 week rota now, though, aren't you? Doing them every other week.
Yeah, that's right. And every other one is supposed to be news based, but there's actually been quite a dearth of related news the last couple of weeks. I think
Yeah.
I can't think of any pressing kind of movement issues or pressing kind of news, that's broken really.
No, to be fair, in terms of all things vegan, I'm not hugely in the loop for the first time in a while. There's quite a lot of stuff that I haven't caught up on that I normally would have. I'm still being quite sporadic with my sort of online activity and what I do watch and what I do commit to. So there's quite a lot of stuff that I don't actually know all that much about. I'm not sure what I have missed and what I haven't.
No, are you still planning on going back on Messenger? I know you don't like
Yeah.
Facebook.
At some point, purely for quite a number of reasons. I know there's definitely people that I need to respond to who probably don't listen to this, and I don't have on TikTok or Instagram. But also at some point, I need to get back in with the NARM stuff and catch up with that as well because I haven't got a clue what's been going on.
Oh yeah, we've just lost them off the stream now, but I thought that wasn't a problem, so I just let it
Yeah,
go.
no, that's absolutely fine. But yeah, I mean, I haven't got a clue. I've had a couple of odd chats, but I haven't had a proper catch up with Alan for ages. So yeah, I need to get back in the loop with some of that stuff and return some people's messages that have probably been waiting ages.
Yeah, everyone's going. What happened to that Andy?
But yeah, no, that is sort of I may well do that early next week.
Tell me about this new kind of upload that you've done, which I didn't fully understand, if I'm honest. So tell me about it.
What? Oh, the link that I sent. So yeah,
Yeah.
so essentially, it's on the website. If you go on helpwithgoingvegan.info/film, the link is on there. But essentially, yeah, it's the full version of the film. If anyone wants to, because obviously it's already uploaded on my channel, but it's only going to reach so many people on my channel. So if you want to upload it on your own channel, on your own platform, whatever, or even burn it to disk.
So you got to download it and then upload
Yeah,
it.
yeah, it's the full version of the film is literally there to download. It's in a compressed format, so it's not a huge file size. I think it's 800 megabytes or something like that, as opposed to like the 6 gig file which I originally uploaded. So it's quite a significant size reduction, but all the quality is still there and everything else. But yeah, it's just to try and get it some new attention. I don't need any credit. You don't need to point back to my channel. I don't care about any of that. I just want people to watch the film, to be perfectly honest. So yeah, feel free to chuck it any way you want, upload it in any way, shape, or form, as long as you're not breaking any rules on any platform about anything, you have my full permission. Same with burning it to disk or USB or playing it in Outreach or anything you want to do.
Yeah, one thing I did think about is it starts off, the very first thing you say is something about what, 2022 or something.
At the point of writing this in March 2023, I know it off by heart still. Yeah.
Oh, okay, right. It's just that that's going to date it eventually, isn't it?
Yeah, it will, it will, it will. But at the same time, people know where all of my research is up to, I suppose. And I've got no problem. I don't want to start working. See, my sort of like pushback here, I suppose, to myself is I don't want to start working on like a second version or a more updated version or anything like that until this one has been watched by people. I mean, I think with hindsight, the mistake I made was releasing the first one and then too soon afterwards doing the director's cut, because a lot of people that watched the first one haven't watched the director's cut because, as far as they're concerned, they've seen it.
Mm.
So that's something that I don't want to like touch on these subjects again really until more people have seen it. I'd much rather have some criticism from someone that disagrees with me and have something to sort of come back to.
Most people understand that when they see the term director's cut, there's going to be a lot more
You would,
than.
you would you would think so, but yeah, I've had quite a few people when I was posting it in the groups on Facebook going, "Oh, I've watched this. I watched it a few weeks ago, and this was like 3 or 4 days after I released the director's cut," and it's like you didn't. But it's because it's the similar thumbnail, same name, so I can understand why. But yeah, that was the mistake I kind of made, I guess. In hindsight, I wouldn't do that again. But yeah, so it's kind of freely available for anyone that wants it to use in any way, shape, or form. Even if you want to split it up into various bits and put it on TikTok, I don't mind. I didn't have a lot of success when I tried to do that, but I think I got frustrated splitting it into bits.
And what did you do? Just cut it down to 10-minute sections?
Well, now at the time you couldn't do 10 minutes. They were in like 3 minute sections,
Oh,
and I
right.
think I just kept forgetting how far along that I'd got.
Well, it might be interesting to do a 10 minutes
Yeah,
one
yeah.
thing.
I mean, now that you can do the 10 minute thing, it might be worth splitting it in because it will only be in, well, it would be in 5 sections, I suppose, 47 minutes.
You have to do a watch along of your own film.
I have done it. I've played it 2 or 3 times, maybe even more than that, on like TikTok Live when I do one of the streams.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't get blocked when you play it in its entirety or anything. It's got no copyright restrictions on it. It's one of my few films that have got absolutely no. It's a lot of my content has got this can be used on YouTube, and then it's a bit temperamental on other apps. But no, the film's got no copyright restrictions on it whatsoever. And
And
it's
have
been out
you
now
upload?
more than long enough for someone to have struck a claim, if that was the case.
How long did it take to? I mean, would I be able to put it on Facebook, for example?
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
absolutely. Upload. You can upload it to Facebook in its entirety.
because I think there
Instagram,
might be
no,
some
but
people who
Facebook,
might.
yes.
Yeah, I mean, I know a couple of people who will watch things on Facebook, but they don't for
Well,
some
that's
reason.
that's exactly why I uploaded it to my Facebook initially. But obviously, yeah, in exactly the same way, if you want to upload it to your Facebook because people would much rather stay on the one platform to watch things, please do.
Oh yeah, yeah, okay, I do that. Yeah.
Yeah, because it like I said, it's just a case of getting it watched. And like I'm more than welcome the feedback or the criticism in any way, shape, or form. Like I just want it watched.
Hmm. Uh, well, I suppose we've already done the kind of Victor Schonfeld kind of Phil Windiat thing, which is, I kind of interviewed you about the film, so I
Yeah,
suppose we've already done
yeah,
that
we've
bit.
already done that, I'm afraid. Yeah.
Mm.
And I haven't done anything significant since that you could do like a follow up or a where is he now sort of thing. So there's not really any way we can get anything else out of it that way.
Yeah, actually, I've got to do some work on that Schonfeld thing because I eventually got actually on the day itself. I'd already started my 12-hour thing when I got an email saying, "Go ahead and show the the clip from the DVD package."
Yeah,
Because I was saying, look, I've got a YouTube channel. It's not monetized, so I'll not make any money out of it. But that particular interview, I mean, there is a couple of dodgy bits, but that particular interview is a really brilliant advert for the Animals film.
yeah, it is. Yeah,
And so they eventually said, yeah, okay, go ahead. And then Schoenfeld got to me and said, you need to contact the people again to see whether you can convince them to put it up on YouTube as an advert for the film, because he thought that they didn't quite understand that that's how it would work. That
Yeah.
the interview, because the animals film, apart from the trailer, you can virtually not see any of the animals film on YouTube.
Well, I wish. I mean, because I've got and obviously I shouldn't get in trouble for this, but I enhanced the animals film when I was doing like the enhancements before. So I've got like a HD almost version of that film on a USB stick that I would love to put on YouTube so that everybody could watch it. I'm like, how long has it got to be out before you stop wanting to make money from it and just let people watch it because it's relevant and important? But yeah,
Well,
obviously I can't upload it because it's copyright and
yeah,
it's
the weird thing is, it's kind of like as the years go by, it
well,
gets
this is the
more
problem.
irrelevant.
Obviously, all the information's out of date, and a lot of the footage
You
is
can only
really
see it now
dated.
as a historical document
Yeah,
now.
but it is a very good film. It's just a shame that hardly anyone has actually seen it.
Well, a lot of people from my generation saw it.
Yeah, I suppose, but no one really who's been vegan less than 15 years has probably seen it or even heard of it.
No,
A lot of
no.
people.
I really upset poor old Victor because when I did a time tunnel about it, I described it as my generation's Earthlings, and he went he went absolutely potty with me about it
Mhm.
because him being a filmmaker, he
Yeah.
was saying the Animals film is far superior to Earthlings,
Well,
which
if
is
you if
just a
you if you've still got a means of communication with him, the one thing that I would suggest is that he makes it available on YouTube, even if you have to buy or rent it.
oh yeah, that's another issue, I suppose. You could do that.
Yeah,
You can
because
do that
because
on
in this
YouTube,
in
can't
this
you?
day and age, I'm telling you now, people that sort of even are interested in this, like say that I couldn't have obtained a version when I did, I wouldn't have spent £18 for a DVD. I haven't even got a DVD player. So it's just too much to ask. But £4 to rent for a weekend or whatever it is, 5.99 to own. Yeah, people will do that.
Yeah, well, I'll put that to the person I'm supposed to be talking to then, because I think they're the ones who've got the say so about it.
Because
Although I'm sure,
that way they can age restrict it. And obviously, yeah, if you want to pay for it and you want to rent it, then you can. And at least lots more people could watch it then. I'm not saying they necessarily will because people are people, but they definitely have got an option to watch it if it's available to rent or buy on YouTube. Whereas,
I,
yeah, I just think in 2023, if your only means of putting media out is a DVD that you have to pay a significant amount for, you ain't selling any.
yeah, and as you said, there are quite a lot of people now don't have DVD players.
No, they don't. I mean, the vast majority of computer towers that you'll buy these days, unless you specify, don't have a DVD drive either. They don't have a CD drive. It's kind of
No,
like
I had to buy an external one.
exactly. Even a lot of laptops now, they don't have a CD drive. So yeah, these are things that if that's your only means of distribution, you probably need to look into something else. And both
But
YouTube,
Andy, I think the time of the Animals film has probably been and gone, really.
it probably has, but I still think that it'd be a lot of people that would watch it for research or nostalgic purposes if it was available on, say, Vimeo or YouTube to rent for the whatever. Because quite a lot of people do that with things.
Yeah,
And
I'm surprised that somebody didn't put a pirate copy on Vimeo.
you can't get it on. Tried.
Oh,
'Cause I tried it on YouTube and on Vimeo just so that I could set it like only me, like unlisted, so that I could send it to you and a couple of other people and say, "Yeah, I have a watch of this," but it comes up copyright straight away. Gets to about 15% upload and then says copyright material found.
all right.
So it's still very, very, bigly protected.
Bigly protected. I like it.
I couldn't think of the right word, but yeah, it's still the copyright on it is still pretty hot. So
It's a bigly good film, I reckon.
but yeah, that's definitely well worth. Or even if they've got a website where and they don't want to use YouTube, for example, and they want to do their own, a digital marketplace is definitely a way to get. So, because I honestly don't think anyone will be buying that DVD.
Well, they'll know, won't they? But I mean, yeah. I mean, I'll certainly make that point to the person I'm supposed to be writing to about it all,
Yeah.
and see what they make of it. Because it could just be that they haven't thought of what you've just said.
Yeah, possibly. I hear Joe. You're right. Yeah, I mean, if they don't still make media on a regular basis, then obviously it was way before anything like this was a possibility. So yeah, it may just be something that's never occurred to them.
Yeah, 1981 it was.
Exactly. So this is before even the days of floppy disks, let alone USB sticks. So
Yes, yes. Hi, Joanna. How you doing? Right, I suppose we better go. We've actually gone over the 2 hours now.
yeah, don't take that personally, Joe. Literally, you've just come in and we're about to go. But
Yeah, yeah, it's your fault, Joe. I'm sorry about that. Yeah. We made an agreement that as soon as you turn up, we're off.
but yeah, hopefully it should be on. It's depending on how long TikTok decides I have to wait before they'll let me download the show. It should be on YouTube tomorrow. Last week, for some reason, it took about 30 hours before they let me download it. But
I've
hopefully,
still got to do a bit more. That conversation that me, you, and Ronnie had.
yeah, there's a
There
couple
is a
of good
second
bits in
part
there.
of it, but I haven't put it up yet.
All right.
In fact, the first part of it got pretty much ignored on social media.
Yeah, as does everything.
Yeah, probably because of the content, I suppose.
It might have also been the length. That's why I'm thinking will people watch the film in 10-minute sections? I don't know. Is that still too long?
Well, I might try and do that and see, and then I'll also do the Facebook one as well.
Yeah, I think the Facebook one will definitely be interesting because I know there's quite a lot of people who will watch a video on Facebook, even if it is quite a lengthy video, but they don't like moving away from Facebook. They don't like opening a new app or they don't like opening a new tab or whatever it is. They just like staying where they are.
Yeah, but I got the feeling that a lot of people don't watch anything of any length anymore. You know.
Wow, that could well be the case. But I know from sort of being around people before when we've all been on our phones at the same time, say that certain people will click a link on Facebook and it'll say, "Oh, you need this particular YouTube app that they haven't got," and they say that's it. That's the end of the decision made. They ain't watching it. Whereas if it just plays when they click the button, then they're more inclined to actually watch it. But yeah, I don't know whether they'll watch it for the entire duration.
Yeah. Oh, don't feel bad, Johnny. You'll be able to watch it back, I suppose.
Yeah, no worries. Don't worry. But yeah, just because you've just come in, Joe, I have made the link for the documentary like freely available. If anyone wants to download it, pull it up on their own channel, their own platform, their own whatever, DVD, put it on VHS if you know how.
See, the problem is, though, Andy, to be honest, you're going to need a name to promote it, and none of them will.
No, I know. I wish to be fair, that Planet-based News would just not ignore one of my 4 or 5 emails that I've sent them, just asking them to watch the film. Because considering the amount of adverts they've done for that new spiritual film that's not even made yet, it would be nice if they were, a bit fair and they gave that attention evenly. But no, I mean, just acknowledgement would be nice.
Well, they're just pea ignorant, aren't they?
Uh, But yeah, you are right. And unless someone with an enormous platform really gives it some attention, it's not actually ever going to get watched. But it is what it is. It'd be nice if like Vegan Gains or someone would did one of the when they do the watch along and they just sit and chat and eat. Um, just put the film on.
Well, vegan gays might do it.
Maybe. And to be fair, I think that's its kind of that when I was making the film, the ideal kind of like environment I had for it to be watch would be like a Discord watch along or whatever with 20 or 30 vegans so they can have a discussion about it whilst it's going on. Yeah, that was always kind of like the idea in mind. It just never has worked.
No, but I was thinking vegan gays, not vegan
Yeah,
gains.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But like it doesn't anyone to be honest, it's because they've all got different audiences to the people that follow my
Mm.
YouTube channel, for example, which is exactly what I want. The more different people with the more little vegan niches that they've all got their own followings of all people from different backgrounds and stuff, and the more of them that kind of look at it, the more different perspectives you get back, the more different opinions, the more sort of scattered views.
I think the subject matter is probably confusing for modern day activists because they don't understand it probably.
Probably.
I mean,
Maybe
I think it kind of delves into areas that they don't even know existed, and because of that, for some reason, they're not. You know, it's not as though, you see, I would expect them to go, blimey, I didn't know any of this. This is going to be interesting, right? But it doesn't seem to be that's the way the world works anymore.
I mean, I have had some really nice and positive feedback from some really good people, but just we are talking about people that I would have expected to have already got it. Yeah, I suppose. Like these are all people that already demonstrated that they kind of thought that way. I can't say that I've had anyone that said, "Wow, you know, I was doing this until I watched the film." That's the one thing I can't really say I've had any of, and those are the audience that I'm trying to reach.
Mm. Yeah, getting the right audience is a problem.
It is,
Right,
yeah.
young man, I'm going to have to split
Yeah, no
now.
worries, no worries. Right, yeah, thank you everyone for joining us. We'll be here same time next week. Hopefully, Ronnie can join us next week. And yeah, take care. Have a good weekend or good night wherever you are, and we'll speak to you soon. See you later.